ECU?
R.
Do you bleed purple and gold? Are you ready to hoist the colors?
Hoist the colors!
It's time for the most in-depth look into the world of ECU athletics. Welcome to Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game. Watch the show live on Facebook and at 943thegame.com. Here's Stephen Igo.
Welcome in. It is Hoist the Colors on a Tuesday, June 24th edition of the program. Thrilled to have you with us live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. If you ever miss any part of the show, you can always download the IBX Media app. Also check out Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as our show archives on YouTube and Facebook and X as well to get anything you missed, like the John Gilbert interview yesterday. We'll dive more into that a little bit later. Key takeaways, anything that really stood out from that hour-long conversation. Awesome interview with the ECU Director of Athletics in studio on Monday. But now we're moving on. It is a Tuesday. We've got much to discuss as ECU baseball continues to add pieces via the transfer portal. We'll talk about that. We'll get into the discussion of what next year's pitching staff could look like as a whole here in a little bit. We've got Philip Pilkington back in the 94.3 The Game studios. Philip, how you doing on this Tuesday?
I'm good, Igo. It's exciting. I feel like I haven't talked in a while. It's been since last Friday. I'm ready. I'm back.
Philip is well rested. He's ready to go. We will have, by the way, a guest later, segment 2. We will have a Charlotte 49ers opponent preview. But other than that, Philip, and I think that's only, 11 or 12 minutes, full disclosure. We've already recorded that as we'll continue on our ECU football opponent previews. You'll have the whole hour to talk. So this may turn into the Philip Pilkington hour.
I'm down. Let's do it. We all know I can talk.
Hey, that's why we have you in the role you're in. Obviously, you're great with the tech stuff and the producing, but I want you here for your sports knowledge.
You don't need to stroke the ego. It's all good. We know I'm not good with the tech stuff. Way to lie to the people.
Hey, you're a multifaceted young man. Philip Pilkington, one of the best. All right, so let's get into this discussion. And we'll start with the latest news of East Carolina baseball picking up some more portal additions. So I think since we last really talked about this on the air, ECU has added 2 pitchers, both potential starting pitchers. This now brings their total number of pitching commitments via the transfer portal. This does not include incoming freshmen. This is via the transfer portal to 5 pitchers. Also, 1 position player that we know of, Jeff Sabater out of Millersville, an outfielder, center fielder type, leadoff hitter type profile. He is committed, and now we have 5 pitchers. So we've, of course, talked about the guys that have been committed previously, more profiling as relievers, Thomas Paxton out of Belmont, Abbey, Gavin Marley from Lenore-Rhine, and Joseph Webb from Liberty. Since we've had this last discussion, ECU has added 2 more projectable starting pitchers. St. Joe's transfer, Frank. Now, let's see if we can get this right. Ciccone, but I believe an Italian last name, so it's Ciccone. I'll try to get clarification when I talk to Frank later this week for an interview. But Frank Ciccone from St. Joe's threw 70-plus innings last year as the Friday night starter for a Hawks team that finished just under 500 in the Atlantic 10. You know, good fastball, low 90s, 4-pitch mix, a guy who is going into his final year of eligibility, so an older player. He committed to East Carolina. Now, he also visited Pittsburgh. I believe he was going to visit Virginia Tech, canceled that visit to commit to East Carolina. So ECU adds him over the weekend. He announced that decision in the recent days. Now, last night, after visiting over the weekend, Gavin Van Kempen, a transfer from West Virginia, 6'6", 245-pound right-hander who has been a part-time starter for the Mountaineers, announced his commitment to ECU as well. From my understanding, was set to visit Georgia later this week, canceled that visit to commit to ECU. So Pirates get 2 guys who have starting experience. Are they absolute slam dunks on paper? No, but both going to their senior year of eligibility. And the thing I like most about Ciccone is he's a guy who's going to throw strikes. He can give you length. He can pitch deep into games. He did that with pretty regularity for St. Joe's. And then Van Kempen, I would categorize, maybe doesn't give you as much proven length, but probably has the highest ceiling, arguably, of any transfer ECU has landed. He was a 20th round pick out of high school, went to Maple Hill in New York, attended West Virginia, has dealt with some inconsistency and injuries there, but he's 6'6", 235, tops out at 97, more consistently in the 91 to 94 range, has a slider, change, and curveball as well. His best season was in 2024 when he started 5 games, pitched in 13 total contests, went 7-1 with a 3.14 ERA, 35 strikeouts in those 28 and 2/3 innings against 14 walks. And then this past season was in the rotation to begin the year, 13 starts, 14 games total, dealt with a shoulder injury towards the back half of the year, 39 and 2/3 innings he finished with, 37 strikeouts, 26 walks, 6.13 ERA. So the walks a little high, the ERA a little high, but a bounce back candidate, Phillip, and I like this addition. Clearly a guy who has some upside, has proven he can do it before. Now, there is a little bit of an injury concern with the shoulder, but from my understanding, he was throwing bullpens by the end of the year. He was on West Virginia's super regional roster, their active roster, so he may have pitched in that super if he got to a third game. But a definite bounce-back candidate here. Your thoughts on the additions of Ciccone and Van Kempen?
I'm just going to do it in chronological order, so I'm going to start with Ciccone. This was what you hope is your Jake Hunter replacement. And I've said it multiple times on this show, really good teams have about 3 Jake Hunters. It's a guy you can give him the ball, whether it be on a Sunday, whether it be on a day, a midweek, whether it be a day your starter got chased early, and say, hey, I need 4 innings, give up 2 runs, and we're in a good spot. Give up less than 2 runs, we're in a great spot. That's what Jake Hunter was for this team. That's what Jake Hunter was, especially down the stretch. That's what Ciccone can be. Could he start? Sure. I think with the upside of this staff, we probably don't want him to be a starter, and that's not a knock against him. But you know how it would have been, like I said a year ago with Jake. You were hoping it was, Antolik, and you were hoping it was Jenkins and Norby, but things got moved around. So I think that's his replacement. As it comes for, how do you say Van? What's his second?
I think it's Van Kempen, although I will also be announcing. Yeah. Kempen.
Okay. Van Kippen, this guy, there is no reason, if healthy, that he is not fighting for a starting job. This is a guy who, look, he doesn't strike out a lot of guys. He can get you some innings. He doesn't have to fill in and be your Friday night guy. You've got one of those. Hopefully he doesn't have to be your Saturday guy. I think we have one of those. This is a guy who can possibly start a midweek, possibly start on Sunday, or possibly be another Jake Hunter. And look, if we've got 3 or 4 guys like these 2 on our roster, you feel really good. You need a couple stars, you need a couple high leverage guys, and you need some really decent inning eaters. And I think Van Kippen, however the heck you say it, I'll learn it eventually. It took me forever to learn Peltier.
We'll just call him GVP.
Yeah,
How about that?
GVP. With him, I think this could go a lot of ways, in a lot of different good ways, right? This is going to be your guy that maybe his role changes throughout the year. Maybe, Antolik and/or Towers aren't quite ready to be starters at the beginning of the year after, just due to rust. So maybe he, is a starter, and then when one of those guys come in, they're better than him, and then he gets into that 2-inning setup role. Hey, man, we need the 7th and the 8th. Can you go get them both? Sure. And, neither one of these guys are high strikeout guys. They're probably not going to be high leverage guys. They come out of the bullpen. They're probably going to be guys who you start with clean innings, but that's okay. You need a lot of guys like that. Like I said, Jake Hunter was that way, not a huge strikeout guy, big weak contact guy. So I love the additions of these guys. This is the definition. Depth piece is something that seems like East Carolina struggled with the last few years.
Pirates clearly going with the method of adding as many capable pitchers as possible, and I like the approach thus far, Phillip. It's not all guys trying to make the leap from Division II to Division I. You've got a couple of those guys, but it's not all. It's not like all an upside and bounce back play too, which obviously Van Kempen would seem to qualify as. You've got some guys who are making a leap. You also have a guy who's pitched at a pretty high level already and been pretty dominant in Joseph Webb of Liberty, who can go short or long out of the bullpen. I just think they're doing a nice job of kind of hitting every layer here. I always get the question, like, what's the best approach in the transfer portal for multiple ECU sports? And I don't really think it is a one-size-fits-all answer. I think you just have to find the best fits. Obviously, it's on the coaches to find, character-wise, who's going to fit in the locker room. Talking with a lot of these guys from that side of it, I really think they're strong fits for an East Carolina program that honestly is not easy to play at. It is a different mentality it takes to win inside this baseball program. I think a lot of these guys fit that mentality, and so I think they're doing a good job there. And just the variety of arms they've added, with more to come. I think they'll at least add one more, maybe even more, depending on what the potential options are. Like I know they're after Austin Breedlove from Tennessee. He's got some heavy shooters as well, but there's several arms they are still after. But I just like the approach thus far, Philip, and I think Austin Knight, Cliff Galvin, and company are going about this the right way from a portal aspect, which is always an unknown. But to an extent, you do kind of have to know at least somewhat of what you're getting.
You brought up that not one size fits all, so I would answer that question with the word variety, right? It's okay to have a guy that comes from Texas Tech or Oklahoma that maybe didn't pitch as much. We have those examples on this roster, or did have an example in Oklahoma. It's okay to have a guy, Carolina's kind of built theirs off guys making the jump because you want guys with college experience. But then again, like you said, it's one thing to pitch the D2 level against D2 hitters, one thing to pitch the D1 level against D1 hitters. So the fact that we've got guys making the jump from Belmont Abbey, that we have guys who are established Power 5 arms, and the fact that we have guys coming maybe that didn't see the playing time they like other places, life is about balance. Sports is about balance and about variety, and I think there's a lot of variety here. And now, look, it's not going to be one of those where it's like, well, we hit on this one guy this one time, and that's always going to hit. No, that's not how it's going to work. But it is nice to have variety, have kind of guys coming through all different aspects just to kind of see, how is this going to work out? This portal thing, as much as it seems like we've been talking about it forever, it still is a fairly new concept.
All right, we have a comment from Terry Long who says, who leads the 26 team in saves? He also adds, do we have an actual closer and do we have a midweek starter? So I would say, Terry, it's obviously too early to be defining any set roles in general. But, from a who leaves the team in save situation or potential answer, I mean, if you had a gun to my head on June 24th, 2025, I would venture to say there's a good shot that one of these incoming guys, Paxton, Marley, or Webb, given their closing experience, Marley, I think, had 10 saves for Lenore Ryan. I want to say Paxton had 8 or 9 for Belmont Abbey, and then Joseph Webb had a couple for Liberty. You also have Colby Wallace returning. And we'll just kind of take that question and get more into our segue, I should say, into our pitching staff as a whole conversation that Philip and I want to have. We'll project the starting rotation here in a minute, but, this staff in general, as you look at it, you're really only returning 4 legitimate pitchers that really pitch for ECU in 2025, and that's Ethan Norby, Sean Jenkins, Jackson DiLorenzo, and Nick Moran. Those guys we know are back. Now, you can include Colby Wallace in that conversation as well. He would be your 5th, but obviously we know he primarily is the third baseman. He can close, but he pitched less down the stretch. So you got a handful of guys who pitched. You got a handful of guys committed in the portal. From my count, you got 5 freshmen in this class, 5 right-handers, I should say, and then a lefty coming in as well in the freshman class. Nathan Wines, Josh Hart, Charlie Hoagland, the lefty, Colby Weber, Van Wilner, and Ethan Rose are the 6 pitchers, according to Perfect Game, committed to ECU in this class. You're adding 6 freshmen. And then on top of that, the most interesting part of this, Philip, is you've got 4 pitchers projected to come back that were on the team last year but did not pitch a single inning due to injury. Brett Antolik, former Texas A&M transfer, a former projected weekend starter. Ryan Towers, former Loyola Marymount transfer. He looked like the Saturday guy going into the season. He missed the season with an injury. Dawson Neal, former JUCO recruit, left-hander. He's projected back from injury after missing all of last year. Played for Brunswick Community College under Davis Kirkpatrick, Donnie Kirkpatrick's son. And then J.D. Little, who's been on the roster for a couple of years but has yet to pitch. All of those guys are projected back, and if all goes well, should be healthy next year. So what I'm saying is this is going to be a completely different staff And if everything hits, which most likely it won't, you could have an embarrassment of riches on the mound, which would be a phenomenal thing for any college baseball program. More than likely, you're going to find a middle ground here, but there's going to be a lot of unknown, but a lot of intrigue going into this fall and obviously beyond for this pitching staff.
Yeah, but as it goes back to that, who's going to be the closer role, I think this could be one of those things where I'm sure they establish something in the fall, right, to an extent, but I think this might be one of those teams where you might not have a defined closer when you show up on February the whatever to the first game of the season. And, look, this past year's team didn't have that guy, right? It was, I guess, it was Ethan Young, but Ethan Young also was given the ball in the sixth inning a few times, right? And maybe even earlier a few times. So, you look at a guy like Dawson Neal. He's coming off the injury, not really sure, but kind of that JUCO route. Don't think he's quite got the stamina to be a starter. Could he be a long reliever? Maybe, but could he fit into that? What about Nick Moran? Moran didn't have a great finish to the season, but if you take the first half of the season from Nick Moran, you can get even close to that next year. I mean, there was a time midway through the season, his ERA was not even close to 1. It was like 0.6. So Moran, the upside's there. He could be your closer. I think this is going to be one of those things. I kind of am going to compare it to 2022 in a little bit, but not in the fact that I don't think the starters are going to be that way, where it's like, hey, man, I just need an inning. I think there's going to be defined starters, but I wonder if the bullpen maybe is going to be a little bit like 2022, and you're not going to have your Danny Beal, where it's like, hey, man, he's our ninth inning guy. And, there's been other guys throughout the time that were the ninth inning guy. You think of who was the closer for him? Was it Matt Bridges? Was he a true?
Yeah. Bridges. He was a pretty true closer for the most part.
So maybe we don't have that. Maybe it's whoever's hot at that time, and I think that's a good problem to have. I think baseball's kind of going away from a true closer. The days of Mariano Rivera, I wouldn't say are totally gone, and there's nothing wrong with having a true closer. But also, it's kind of nice to say, you don't want to be in a situation where it's like, well, this guy's thrown the last 2 days. He's not hot. Who's going to throw the ninth? I don't know. Maybe we're not in that situation. So maybe this is a good thing. Maybe like you said, it's almost like an embarrassment of riches on the mound. That's what you hope it is.
Yeah, and I should say as well, I didn't include Beschloss on our returning pitchers as well. He is on the list. I did forget to mention him as well.
And
so he's
D'Lo.
another lefty.
Did you say
And
D'Lo?
D'Lo. So I had him written down. I don't know if I said him, but Beschloss as well would give you 6 pitchers, counting Wallace, who pitched some legitimate innings, I would say, in 2025 for the Pirates. And going off that conversation, there are 7 projected lefties on the staff. I know I've gotten the question, will ECU add some lefties? I think that's a pretty high number unless you can go out and add a difference-making lefty. But before we get a break in, Philip, we do get the question a lot, how would you project next year's starting rotation? I think you kind of hinted at it earlier, but Norby's got to be your Friday guy on paper. And, again, on paper is a lot different from real life. But I would say, for me, Jenkins on paper is your Saturday guy going into the fall. And then after that, it's kind of wide open who the third guy is. Do Antolik and Towers come back? Is Van Kampen a potential possibility there? Saccone, as somebody pointed out, is how we're supposed to pronounce it. Is Dawson Neal, can he get in that mix? So I think there's no shortage of candidates. It's just who's going to emerge as that third guy.
In a perfect world, Norby, Jenkins. I'm going to go Towers next. Look, this is a guy who started at Loyola Marymount, was a proven. I'm not mixing up him and Antolik. He was the one from Loyola Marymount, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Antolik was A&M.
Yeah. So proven starter at Loyola Marymount, was supposed to probably be your Saturday guy this past year. Now, again, I think if the season – I shouldn't even say start of the day. Let's pretend these guys are healthy. I think at the beginning of the season it's going to be the West Virginia kid. It'll be the Sunday. That's my projected, and that is because his injury was smaller. He pitched this past season, 14 appearances, 13 starts. And I think in a perfect world, it's not that he pitches bad, but I think maybe Antolik has a slider higher upside. He slots into that Sunday role once we build up his stamina, and then you move whatever to Tuesday, or he becomes the guy that it's like, if anybody gets in trouble at all in the weekend, we can yank him in the third, give you the ball, you can give us 5 innings, and it not hurt us. So I think that's the perfect world projecting up to February. I mean, I don't know. Again, there's going to be somebody that we did not think is going to be worth a dang who's going to come up and be a star. And unfortunately, there's probably going to be a guy that we thought was going to be good that come April, you'll have never heard from him again.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, especially on the pitching front, we're talking about college baseball pitching. And if there's one thing I've learned, let alone following Major League Baseball pitching, you can never really count on how it looks on paper. College baseball pitching at times is even more of a crapshoot, especially we're sitting here in June. It looks pretty good on paper, but there's a reason you stockpile as many arms as possible and then take your chances from there. So you need some good fortune. You need some guys to develop, and you're probably going to have a guy that doesn't develop how you want to or doesn't perform how you envision him. And that's why you want as many bullets in the chamber, so to speak, to fire off on your pitching staff as possible. So we'll continue to have this discussion all throughout the fall, obviously, as we return for our August shows and get into some fall practices as well, see how it looks then. But looking forward to diving further. But that's kind of how it looks on paper as of today. We got to get a break in. We'll come back. We'll shift gears. We'll talk Charlotte 49ers football. We'll preview that game, ECU hosting Charlotte. Can they get over the hump this year and beat the 49ers? We'll discuss that next on Hoist the Colors.
The team of Flatlands Jessup is working overtime to help ensure that Eastern North Carolinians like you get the health insurance help you need this open enrollment period. New legislation passed, meaning more people than ever qualify for affordable coverage. Let us help you today.
Big tax credits are back. Get a 30% tax credit, up to $2,000 off your new Mitsubishi electric heat pump install. Let Comfort Master help you take advantage of the tax credits with a qualifying Mitsubishi electric ducted heat pump or non-ducted Mitsubishi electric mini splits. Mitsubishi electric mini splits are ideal for bonus rooms, garages, or sunrooms. If you need a new HVAC unit, call Comfort Master today.
Call Comfort Master. Call Comfort Master.
At Parker's Barbecue, our family has been serving your family for 3 generations.
For that, we say thank you.
Blessing families every Thursday. Kids eat free all day. That's the Parker's way.
Legendary food served from our 3 locations. Always quick, always delicious. That's the Parker's way.
At Parker's, our mission is to impact our customers through Christ-like service in a way that feeds them both physically and spiritually. That is the Parker's way.
You know what the problem is with standard belts? Usually you have to choose between too tight or the opposite, too loose. But with Anson Belt and Buckle, you don't have to choose. We got rid of the holes and instead have a track system designed for micro-adjustability. That way you can enjoy a perfect fit every time. Anson Belt and Buckle. Find your perfect fit today.
Healthwise Pharmacy rounds the bases with all of your by pharmacist Marcy Parker. Healthwise has grown to be your most trusted provider for infusion services, currently providing in-home or on-site infusions in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. Visit Healthwise Pharmacy at 615B South Memorial Drive or call 252-295-0059 to speak to a patient service representative to find the option that best suits your needs.
Tired of the 1-800 numbers advertising Medicare products? Flatlands Jessup has 6 offices all throughout Eastern North Carolina. Get face-to-face help from our local award-winning licensed team. Stop by today. Flatlands Jessup, your whole world covered.
It's back.
Inner Banks Media presents the #1 outdoor concert series in Greenville.
Concert on the Common.
The next band to hit the stage at the Greenville Toyota Amphitheater is On the Border, the ultimate Eagles tribute.
Get more details on this year's concert series at concertonthecommon.org. See you June 26th for On the Border. Remember, get the podcast of the show on the IBX Media app or where you get your podcasts.
Got it. You don't have to tell me twice. I remember it exactly.
Stephen Igo and Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
Welcome back into Hoist the Colors on a Tuesday edition of the program. We're rolling right along on our ECU football opponent previews. Next up, the Charlotte 49ers, who will travel to East Carolina this season. It'll be the third year in a row the Pirates and 49ers have met on the football field since Charlotte came over to the American. We welcome in Cameron Williams, who covers Charlotte for the Charlotte Post. Cameron, and first off, welcome to the show, and secondly, an interesting transition for you guys covering Charlotte, going from the great Biff Poggi to Tim Albin. So if you could just kind of talk us through what that transition has been like as somebody who covers the team.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's been quite a unique transition. You go from someone who, I guess, in the best definition, has a lot of charismatic qualities to a guy that's very reserved and more so held back. When the name was thrown around in the coaching search, from an X and O standpoint, I'm thinking, that would be a great hire. But then going from a guy like Biff and to a coach like Tim Albin, I wondered how players would receive that, just a complete culture change. But overall, I think it's been going really well. The players seem bought in, and you can't argue with Tim Albin's success at Ohio. So I think Mike Hill and the athletic department there at Charlotte, they really found a gem.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, you look at it, 3 consecutive 10-win seasons for Albin at Ohio, and including a conference championship last year. From what I can tell, at least, Cameron, he doesn't really have any ties to the area. Like, he played at Northwest Oklahoma State. He's from Oklahoma, spent time in Nebraska, North Dakota State, Ohio. So, like, I don't know, is that a concern at all, or does it not really matter in this NIL era where everybody's kind of recruiting from all over the country at times?
Yeah, and see, I have a background in covering high school sports here in the Charlotte area too, so I know that's one of the biggest complaints I hear from high school coaches is that the prior 2 or 3, 2 coaches that Charlotte's had, and Healy and Poggi, hadn't really recruited the area much. I don't know how much this is going to change with Tim Albin. I know he's gotten to some local high schools. There have been coaches around here that have posted pictures with him, him visiting their schools. But it'll be interesting because, like you mentioned, the ties really aren't there. A lot of the guys that they've brought in so far from the portal haven't been Charlotte players, from the Charlotte area. So it'll be unique. It'll be different. But overall, in the NIL area, you're wanting to get the best players no matter where they're from, and I think that's going to be his ultimate goal.
We're visiting with Cameron Williams, who covers the 49ers for the Charlotte Post. All right, well, let's look at the quarterback situation, Cameron, and look, the Purdy transferring obviously out, Max Brown transferring out. So who has Charlotte brought in, and any read on how that quarterback competition is looking this offseason?
I think it's a 3-man race. In my personal opinion, I think it's more so a 2-man race between transfer Grayson Loftus from Duke and Connor Harrell from UNC. I think those two have really emerged as the guys that are going to be battling for that QB1 spot. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in thinking that Albin can't run a 2-quarterback system, although I know Charlotte fans don't want to see that again because that's all Biff Poggi really did. Didn't seem to work out. I know they really want a fun guy that can take the leadership role. But if I had to pick who's going to start come August, I would say Connor Harrell. But we did see Grayson Loftus first in the spring game. But you, as well as I know, a lot can change from April to August.
No doubt. Any other notable transfer additions, and just in general, like how much did they get hurt by the portal? With the coaching turnover, I mean, it's tough enough to hold on to talent, but how much did kind of the coaching turnover hurt them as well? And then did they do a good job making up for that, in your opinion?
I think they did a really solid job making up for it. One key transfer you mentioned that stands out to me is Don Chaney in the running back room. They lost a few running backs to the portal, and I think one to graduation. But now you add in Don Chaney, and you were able to retain Rod Gainey, who was a key recruit under Biff Poggi. I think those two are going to head the way at the running back spot. Chaney formerly comes from Louisville and then Miami before that. So he knows what it's like to play high-level football. Really stocky back, but is also very quick, agile, and I'd like to see what Albin comes up with in his offense for Don as well as Rod Gainey.
Defensively, is there any early gauge on how they may be on that side of the ball, Cameron, or is it too early to say? Obviously, new staff coming in. I know, practice availability has been limited. Just like any any overall thoughts on just how they may stack up on that side of the ball?
Well, I mean, just looking at pre-season all AAC selections, I mean, you got two linebackers in Reed Williford and Shea Taylor. Shea Taylor's another newcomer. I think those two guys, more so from a leadership standpoint, is going to be crucial for this team. Both guys that can really, get after the quarterback, but also do really well in pass coverage. So I think you'll see big impacts from those two guys, and as well as Jaquarius Conley. That's a whole other story right there. He had some transfer eligibility issues last year that didn't get resolved till over halfway through the season. But when he was on the field, he was very productive. So I expect him to have another big year.
Visiting with Cameron Williams from the Charlotte Post, covers the 49ers. All right, Cameron, this schedule is definitely intriguing, if nothing else. I mean, you open with App State and Bank of America, something ECU did a couple of years ago when the Mountaineers got after them pretty good. And then you host North Carolina week 2, and you get a couple winnable games, Monmouth and Rice. So they don't have to leave the city of Charlotte until early October. And then it gets – the schedule's pretty daunting from there. But we'll start with just the non-conference. Like, how important, how much buzz is there about these first 2 games in particular?
Well, there's going to be buzz about any UNC Chapel Hill game, obviously, with their storylines, hiring Bill Belichick. But, I mean, Appalachian State, that's a game that the fan base really wants. It's kind of an unwritten rivalry, if you will. App State, being an in-state opponent. I think it could be a winnable game, like you've already mentioned. It could be too early to tell, but North Carolina is going to be a tough game. Bill Belichick, obviously, he knows how to coach. He hadn't won Super Bowls for nothing, and some can argue it was all Tom Brady. I don't tend to think that. I think it was a little bit of a mixture of both. But then you mentioned the winnable games, the Monmouth and Rice, and I think if you're gonna have the best possible scenario for the first 4 games, you could be 3-1. But definitely 2-2. If they're any worse than 2-2 coming out of those first 4, it could be a rough year.
Yeah, I mean, you get the off dates in late September, and then it's at USF, at Army. Temple at home, obviously winnable game. North Texas, they always can score. Then you get at ECU, UTSA, at Georgia, at Tulane down the stretch. I mean, the back half of the schedule is pretty brutal. And look, I'm looking at the over-under in Vegas. They've got the over-under at 2.5. I think, unless they're just in major transition or Tim Albin, like 3 is obviously doable, and if not more. So, I don't know, any thoughts on that 2.5 win total? Any gut feeling there?
Yeah, the odds are like -160, I think, on FanDuel for the over. Like I said, if you can go 2-2 in your first 4, win that game against Rice and Monmouth, I see maybe eking out a Temple win, maybe East Carolina, but yeah, UTSA, Georgia, and Tulane, I've already chalked those up to L's.
All right, so ECU and Charlotte, it's a nice little developing rivalry in the American now. And look, Charlotte just absolutely pasted ECU in Jerry Richardson Stadium last year. I remember Cameron vividly talking to upset donors after that game as ECU that ultimately cost Mike Houston his job. And so, how are Charlotte fans viewing this rivalry? Look, Biff won the game and still didn't retain his job at the end of the season, but this game right now is, it's a game that Charlotte has won the last 2 years. So just your thoughts on this rivalry as someone who covers Charlotte, and is it growing from your point of view?
Yeah, from my point of view, it's a great rivalry. I did have a few fans that when they found out I was going to be on with you, they wanted me to make it known that it's not a rivalry until you win a game. That's not coming from me. That's
fair.
From Charlotte fans. But look, the first game in 23, that was I would have rather watched paint dry. That game was so boring.
Game.
But then, last year was a bit of an outlier because Charlotte hadn't played super well that season to that point, and then they just come out of nowhere. And I know from a fan's perspective, they're like, okay, maybe this is the turning point they need. And then after that game, they start playing lackluster again. So maybe it's just one of those games where Charlotte, gets up for ECU and maybe vice versa. I know East Carolina, they're going to have that bad taste in their mouth this year. And they're going to want to put their stamp on this rivalry, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. If ECU doesn't come to play this year, then I think the time for any excuses is over. I mean, that was something last year, and then I feel like it's kind of bled into other sports too. Cameron, I don't know how much you cover like baseball and basketball as well for the Charlotte Post, but it's just nice as somebody who covers the team to be able to drive to an opposing conference game. Like I can't drive to San Antonio or North Texas or anything like that. So I don't know. I enjoy going to these basketball games and stuff like that. So I feel like it's something that should grow over time.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think it's one that, I mean, you mentioned baseball. ECU, at least in the past, has kind of had Charlotte's number, but Charlotte's getting really solid in baseball. I know Coach Woodard has got this team competing. Won the AAC 2 seasons ago. So you're talking about a rivalry that you mentioned goes across all sports. ECU, I think, clipped Charlotte in basketball or both times, if I'm not mistaken, last year. So, overall, I think the rivalry can grow and it can develop into something that will it ever be Duke UNC? I doubt it, but it could be one of the state's premier rivalries for sure.
All right, he's Cameron Williams with the Charlotte Post previewing the 49ers of Charlotte. Cameron, we appreciate the time, man. We'll circle back in season. It'll be November 8th in Dowdy Ficklen Stadium. This game's scheduled for. We're looking forward to it. But appreciate the insight here as we sit here in late June.
Absolutely. I plan on being there November 8th, so it should be a fun one.
That's Cameron Williams from the Charlotte Post. We'll be right back with more Hoist the Colors after this.
This is about you, your family, and the health of all who live in Eastern North Carolina. This is about the transformation of a health system into something more powerful and more human, about creating new ways to treat disease and keep you well. This is about ECU Health, which is to say, it's really all about you. ECU Health. Minds, hearts, purpose.
You have a choice when you invest in insurance, and when you choose First State Insurance Advisors, you're working with people you can trust. Clark Stallings has deep ties in the community. His team, including Keaton Smith, Regina Asby, Phil Leva, Max Joyner Jr., Max Joyner III, and Ginger Smith, provides knowledgeable and professional advice. First State Insurance Advisors is an independent insurance agency. They offer all types of personal insurance as well as various types for business. Call or email First State Insurance Advisors today. We want to be your trusted choice agency.
Other restaurants claim their food is fresh and fast, but are they friendly? At Moore's, you're treated like family the minute you walk into their doors. With locations in Winterville, New Bern, Swansboro, Morehead City, and Jacksonville. We've been practicing what we preach since 1945. At Moore's, our barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over real wood daily until it's so tender it's falling off the bone. Combined with our fresh chicken, cooked-to-order seafood, and homemade fixins, we're sure you'll agree. If it's not Moore's, it's less.
Storm season is approaching. North Carolina weather can damage your roof, and before long, a small leak can turn into a big problem. Your home is one of your biggest investments, so protect it with Wells Home Improvements.
We work with all insurance companies for a hassle-free roof installation experience. Call us today and get 10% off your roof installation when you mention this commercial.
252-227-8403 or visit us online at wellshomeimprovements.com. Wells Home Improvements. Local, honest, dependable.
Want fresh, homegrown produce? Then look for Peden's Junior Produce. Peden's Junior Produce, a mobile produce stand, is on Memorial Drive beside Parker's Barbecue in Greenville and open Thursday and Friday 10 to 7, Saturday 8 to 7, and Sunday 11 to 6. Choose from seasonal produce like collards, squash, onions, potatoes, corn, and the list goes on. Support your local farmers and enjoy locally grown produce. To find out what's in season, check out Peden's Junior Produce on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Harvesting happiness one crop at a time.
Just in time. This is Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back in. Hoist the Colors. We're rolling along on our football opponent preview. So tomorrow we are scheduled to have Army and Memphis in the same show. And then Thursday, we have got FAU scheduled, which is the season finale. Philip Pilkington with us. Philip, I am efforting like crazy to get UTSA a preview of some sorts. I've now reached out to 4 people. I am on my 4th try to get somebody who covers the Roadrunners on the show. If we cannot get somebody booked by Thursday, me and you are going to be previewing the Roadrunners. So are you ready for that potential thing coming to task?
Am I ready at the moment? No. But the fact that I will know in advance and will get my time to do a deep dive that morning, I should have time, yes. I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to to co-carry with you. And, man, 0 for 4. You know, the interesting thing is usually you only get 3 strikes. The umpire was nice and gave you 4. And I go, gosh, you were going to be my last pick in my baseball draft because you're just whiffing.
I mean, look, you have bad days every now and then where you just can't see the ball and a lot of swinging and missing. You know, we've seen this in the past with some of our favorite baseball players, and this is what's happening right now. But I'm hoping to hit a home run before too long. I'm trying to avoid the golden sombrero.
Yeah,
you know?
that 5th plate appearance, man, that'll be the one.
Yeah. All right. We had multiple comments from Sean Britton and Lane Smith saying, Sean says, got to beat Charlotte this year. And Lane Smith says, can't lose to Charlotte this year. So people don't want to lose to Charlotte. Lane Smith will tackle this before we get into our John Gilbert discussion. Lane Smith says, what do you think of our football? What do you think our football record will be? Look, we've kind of discussed this a little bit. We'll give a brief synopsis here. We'll have a more in-depth show prior to the season. But you know, the Vegas win total is at 6.5, and I believe that's pretty right on the money. Like, I'd probably lean 7 or 8. I do think there's a wide range of outcomes. I know we made our unofficial way too early predictions. I want to say we all landed on 8 wins, which seems a little crazy.
Or did one of us? Did I end up with 9? I feel like I ended up.
I think you ended up with 9.
I thought I ended up with 8, and you guys ended up with 7. But maybe I ended up with 9, and you guys ended up with 8. But I was laughing at myself while I was doing it. And I had some hot takes. It was fun. So I don't remember what the heck we said, Lane. Go back and.
They were unserious though.
Yeah, they were.
I will say this: if like I had to actually pick, I think like if my job was on the line, I think I would go 6 or 7, probably 7. I just look at the schedule. Here's how I see it. All right, Campbell. These are games that I sit here on June 24th, and this is like way too early. And this is not how it's going to play out. But this is how it plays out today, in my head. Like, these games should be a win. Campbell, Tulsa, at Temple, Charlotte, and at FAU. And now there's a lot of things that have changed with a lot of those programs. So for me to say they should be wins doesn't mean they are going to be wins. I'm just saying, like, if ECU is at its potential and these schools don't make a massive leap, you've got 4 of those schools with first-year head coaches. So that's a reason why I'm saying they should be wins. And then you have toss-up games. At State, to me, is a toss-up. Coastal Carolina is a toss-up. Army is a toss-up. Memphis at home is a toss-up. And then I think you have 3 games you're going to be pretty big underdogs in. BYU, at UTSA, and at Tulane. So, like, how do those games go? How do the toss-up games go? I think 6 or 7 makes sense. But a lot of it, I think if you beat NC State in the opener, I think you could be in store for a special season. To me, a lot rides on that game. Like, my expectations. If ECU wins that game, I think you're looking at 8 or 9. If you lose that game, I think 6 or 7 is more the realistic possibility. So that's my general take. I don't know if you have anything to add, Philip.
I'm with you. I agree with everything you say. But I do think if you lose it, but you beat Coastal, 9 might still be a stretch, but maybe 7 or 8 is not out of the possibility. But if you go 0-2 in the first 2 legit games, I think 6 is your ceiling. I hate to say it, but you're probably – because I think Army shifts from a toss-up to a huge underdog.
The first
it's just you got to squander the home game against Memphis or something.
Yeah. At State, at Coastal, BYU, Army, Tulane on the road. Those are your first 5 FBS games. Those are all tough games. So you got to survive that stretch, and then you get to go through Tulsa, Temple, Charlotte before Memphis and UTSA. So if you can survive the first 6, I think you got a shot to have a pretty special season. All right. We also had a question from Terry. Says, also with the roster cuts, can only 34 players play next season? If someone gets injured, you're pretty out of luck. So, look, the roster limit is going down to 34, but some of these players are going to be grandfathered in based on a bunch of conjecture. But essentially, I would expect ECU to have more than 34 players on the roster next season. Now, going forward, long term, you're only going to have 34. So that is a pretty light baseball roster once you start factoring in injuries, especially on the pitching side. All right, John Gilbert, we interviewed him yesterday. Again, you can check out that interview on our podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc. Philip, I'll ask you, as you weren't able to talk for that entire hour, but I assume you did listen. What stood out the most, if you had to pinpoint one or two things about our interview with the ECU AD?
I think that John Gilbert is very forward-thinking in how college athletics is changing. And he, without saying the final projects or the indoor practice facility and the baseball expansion, he kind of hinted that is the deal. Look, we need an indoor practice facility because you lose days. Lightning, you got to practice inside. That's bad. Hindsight being 2020, we could have made this indoor practice facility probably the bare minimum, and they didn't. But the problem is when companies were bidding on this, they didn't know what was going to happen. And once the bids were placed, they were placed. So I'm not mad at the athletic department. I'm not mad at the companies, anything. So let me put that out there. But the fact that John Gilbert said, look, the money is going to go to the athletes because that is where we're going to see return on investment. He's 100% right, and he's in a tough spot, man. Athletic directors historically are judged on how much nice stuff they can build. That just changed overnight. John Gilbert is ready to change with it. He's forward-thinking. He's ready for the new age of college athletics. He's still relatively young, so I don't think he's, just old and set in his ways. He's young for an athletic director, so I'm excited to see where he can take this program. He is full speed ahead. He talked about how he felt about Coach Schwartz, how he felt about the success of the basketball team. He is ready for what is ahead, and I think he's the right man at the helm for us to do it.
I thought he spoke with pretty strong conviction about, as Philip mentioned, the rev share and about Coach Schwartz. And, he spoke like a leader and a guy who feels strongly in his vision for ECU going forward. So I thought he did outstanding with the interview. I'm not just saying that because he was on our show for an hour, but I feel like he was more. Look, John Gilbert is more of the laid back AD than I would say some crazy go getter, always push the envelope. But just sitting with him yesterday and talking with him, on and off the show, I think he's as ready as anybody for the next era of college athletics. And he feels strongly and convicted about, ECU competing in this era. And I thought he did a great job articulating those thoughts on the air yesterday. So really appreciate it, again, John Gilbert's time. He also hit on some scheduling notes as well. It sounds like the Northwestern bye game in 2027 in the Chicago area is all but official. So that will be a fun trip for Pirate fans to make, and a winnable bye game as well. And I believe John's going to be back on 94 through the game. Patrick Johnson, so later this week. Correct,
yeah,
Philip? I want to say Thursday?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sure we missed something, and Patrick will get even more detail with the ECU AD. So, again, check out our interview archived if you missed any of it, as well as Patrick Johnson so later this week, too. All right, we'll get our final break in. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the show after this.
Hi, I'm D.R. Alligood.
And I'm his daughter, Jessica.
For 11 years, we have built quality driveways and parking lots for both your residential and commercial needs. We also offer free on-site quotes to have your custom driveways built the way you want.
252-946-1227.
Your roof is a vital part of protecting your home and family from dangerous storms and hurricanes. At Assist Roofing, we install and maintain metal roofing that provides precise protection. Add value to your home while lowering utility costs with a fortified roof to last a lifetime. With 0% financing, grants, and Energy Star Green Roofing tax credit available. Call us to schedule a free consultation so you can weather any storm with confidence.
Make every day electric on the Kawasaki Electro 20 electric balance bike. Maximize the fun with long run times, impressive top speed, and Kawasaki build quality. Easy adjustability and smooth handling make everyday riding more enjoyable. And the standard MTB type tires provide off-pavement capability. The Kawasaki Electro 20 is the electric balance bike that's built to rip. Go to Ron Ayers Motorsports, Memorial Drive north of the airport, Greenville.
Your confidence makes everything look good. You see the world in vivid color, not black and white. Swing through your neighborhood Fantastic Sam's Cut in Color and let our experienced stylists take you from everyday to extraordinary.
Fantastic Sam's hair salons are locally owned and operated. Our full-service salons are conveniently located in Goldsboro, Kinston, Greenville, New Bern, Jacksonville, and Calabash. Stop in today at Fantastic Sam's, where the possibilities are endless.
If you are interested in living longer and living stronger, Eastern Physical and Lifestyle Medicine is accepting new patients for a limited time. Finding a caring physician can be a challenge. Dr. Billy Smith is board certified in physical medicine and lifestyle medicine and has been practicing in the area for many years. Call for an appointment now to Eastern Physical and Lifestyle Medicine, 252-364-1108 in Greenville. That number again is 252-364-1108.
Looking for a great deal on a new Nissan?
At Greenville Nissan, we've got a great selection of new Nissans for under $30,000.
The stylish Nissan Sentra, offering top-notch fuel economy. The Nissan Altima, known for its comfort and technology.
The Nissan Kicks, the perfect combination with its compact design and performance. The Nissan Versa, delivering incredible value without compromising on features. And don't forget the Nissan Rogue, an award winner for 10 years in a row. Drive it home just for $22 down and $349 a month.
Visit GreenvilleNissan.com today.
Greenville Nissan, where we drive to serve.
For 11 years, we have built quality driveways and parking lots for both your residential and commercial needs. We also offer free on-site quotes to have your custom driveways built the way you want.
252-940. Loyal and bold, we're the purple and golds.
Yo ho ho!
And we're back to hoist the colors with Steve and Igo on 94.3 The Game.
All right, final segment here. We only got a few minutes left. A couple things we need to put a bow on that we really haven't had a chance to talk about are the NBA Finals and the College World Series. We'll start with the College World Series, as I feel like that's something our audience wants to hear about more. We'll maybe tackle NBA Finals later this week. Philip Pilkington producing today. And look, disappointed for Coastal that they were not able to finish the job. You know, LSU obviously is a juggernaut, maybe not as much of a juggernaut as some of the previous national title teams, but still just ridiculous talent. And, you know, you could see Cade Anderson, while he's a top 3 projected pick. Ionson's a stud who pitched Saturday. And their closer, Shores, was throwing 102 miles per hour with movement. Like, they've got ridiculous talent. And they were just a few pitches better than Coastal. Coastal certainly belonged on that stage. Easily could have won both games, certainly the first game, and ended up coming up just short. But I still think overall gives a lot of hope to schools that are in similar shoes to Coastal Carolina and East Carolina. If you do invest, you do go about things the right way, you can win a national championship in baseball still. So that's encouraging. And I think the SEC is still the SEC. I know they didn't have the overall postseason they want. And it was an interesting comparison. I want to say somebody on D1 Baseball, I can't remember who made the comparison, but almost said that LSU is essentially the New York Yankees of college baseball. Like, a lot of people dislike them because they have the most money and the most resources, but it's also good for college baseball because you have a storyline there. You've got a great fan base, and seeing them take over Omaha the way they did, you can't but help be impressed. I mean, it was a home game in Omaha, Nebraska for Louisiana State University. So, like, I do think it's a good thing for baseball that you had this type of championship series instead of, like, I don't know, LSU, Tennessee again, or LSU, Florida. Any other thoughts coming out of the College World Series, Philip, on what transpired over the weekend?
I think you're right. I think it does give, guys hope. We give a lot of thoughts on a lot of things. We don't have time to go into all those right now. Greatest flop job, better than any soccer or basketball player ever. But, the tough thing I think with Coastal is, they had the depth. I said it, if this was 4 out of 7, you would almost pick them. They didn't maybe have the top end arms. The tough thing is with these mid-majors is it seems like you're either in the Zach Root, Trey Savage deal where it's like, hey, you got the top end, but maybe you don't have the depth to hang with LSU, or you've got the depth, but you don't have the two arms to beat them 2 out of 3. That's the tough thing. That's going to be the tough part to invest for schools like Coastal and East Carolina, whereas LSU, they've got the pitching depth and they've got the high-end arms. But, hey, you know what? You get there, anything can happen. Find a way to force Game 3. It's Game 7 atmosphere. You know the old saying, anything can happen Game 7.
Yeah, if they would have got to Game 3 with Eichhoff being able to start, LSU doesn't really have a number 3. I would have liked Coastal. It was really that first game. They missed their opportunity that first game. It was 1st and 2nd against Kate Anderson. They lay the sack down. Anderson makes the throw to get the force, and then they overslide 3rd on an attempted steal where they would have been safe. Like, ultimately, those are the mistakes that cost them. It's not that Coastal wasn't good enough. They just made the mistakes, and LSU didn't. And I thought overall, I enjoyed this College World Series more than past years. I don't know. I know we're short on time, Philip, but like, I think the sport is still in a good spot. So that's what I'm most encouraged about.
I think it is in a great spot. We saw it with Oregon State, who's not in a conference. We saw it with, a little variety with UCLA, Murray State. So just the fact that, we saw such a bland NCAA tournament in basketball, this was great. Got to see some mid-majors. And again, like I said, Oregon State, who would have projected them? I know at the beginning of the season we would have because the talent's there, but who, when this whole thing came out, they weren't going to be in a conference, would have said they ever would have had the talent?
All right, we are out of time. Those are the thoughts of Philip Pilkin. Appreciate him, as always, for holding things down behind the glass in the studio. We'll be back Wednesday. We'll continue on with our opponent previews again. We'll tackle Army. Are they going to be able to run it back after losing Bryson Daly? We'll get the latest on them. Also, UTSA. We'll try to figure them out. We got Memphis on the docket for tomorrow as well. FAU on Thursday. We'll see you Wednesday, 12 noon on Hoist the Colors. Thanks for tuning in.